What's poppin', world? I hope all is well. Thanks for tuning in. It's your favorite dating slash relationship slash marriage coach, and I'm here to give you the game. If you haven't already, go ahead and click that bell so you get notification anytime I go live and anytime I post a video. If at any moment during this video you like what you're hearing, go ahead and hit that like button so we get to the algorithm and more people can see this content. Let's get into this. Today we're going to review a clip by Dr. Umar Johnson. And he's saying that the black church caters to the black woman. We're going to watch this clip and I'm going to break this all the way down.
The black church caters to the black woman. And the reason the black church caters to the black woman is because the black woman is the provider. She has more income and education than the man. So they look at this financially. They also have a vested interest in her never getting married. The pastor is the metaphorical husband of all the single women in the community. I'm not saying he's sleeping with them. I'm saying he's keeping them so distracted with Jesus that they never find a husband, and that's the way he wants it to stay. Because if she finds a husband, she won't have as much time to be donating to the church. So the black church benefits from single motherhood. They don't want our sisters married.
All right, guys, you saw that, you heard that. He says that the black church caters to black women. The black church caters to black women also keeps her single. Right? What are your thoughts about that? Let me know in the comment section. He's saying that the black church solely caters to the black woman. The black church keeps these black women single. The pastor is a metaphorical husband to the women in the church. Right? He said a lot there. What do you guys think about that? Right? And the church benefits from these women being single. The church benefits from these women being single. What are your thoughts about all of this? What are your thoughts? Well, you clicked on this video for a reason. Let me tell you what I think. I think Dr. Umar Johnson in this video, he has a great point. Now, me and him, we generally don't agree on the things that he says, right? Because I love everybody, right? And he says he does, but if you listen to some of his stuff, right, you might question that. But anywho, that's a whole nother story. In this video right here, to a large degree, I agree with what he's saying. Now, I grew up in the black church, and for many, many years, me and my family, we attended the black church. I now attend what you would call a mixed church, right? A church that has all races of people in it. But I grew up largely in the black church. What I will say is this, right? We're just going to cut to the chase. In the black church, there are generally far more women than there are men in there. I'm going to say it again. In the black church, there generally are far more women than there are men in the church. And another thing, majority of the men who are in the black church, for the most part, are married. Not all of them, of course, but typically, the men who you do see in there, in most cases, those men are married. But that is not the case for the women in there. Out of the women in there, I would say that maybe 15% of them are married. I would say 10 to 15% of the women in the black church and the ones I've attended, right, which have been several, and I've been hearing this across the board in different parts of the country, about 10 to 15% of those women in there are married. Now, how do we make sense of that? How do we make sense of that? Are these pastors keeping these women single? I mean, because some could argue, well, how could they keep a woman single, right? I get it. Or is it that these pastors aren't preparing these women for marriage in the right way? Is he not using the Bible in the right way? Is he not using spirituality in the right way? How can we explain this? How can this be thoroughly explained? Because, I was like, that is crazy. But it's real. It's real talk. Many of the women in the black church are not married. And if you go in there, a lot of the sermons do cater to the women in the room. A lot of the sermons do. Even some of the small things, the jokes the pastor may crack in between, a lot of them cater to these strong, quote unquote, independent women. Now, I think that all people should find a great church to go to. I really do. I think that all people should find a great church to go to. Let me just say that, just in case someone thinks that I'm against the church. I'm not against the church. I'm reviewing this clip, and I'm going to speak truth from the experience of myself and many, many other people who speak on these black churches, let's just say. The pastor generally does cater to many of the women. And like Dr. Umar Johnson said, when it comes to finances, it appears that many of the black women in the community are leading the charge. They are leading the charge. So many of them are going to pay offerings, tithes. A lot of the money is going to come from these sisters who are hopeful, right, for a better life, right? These women are hopeful for a better life. Now, when I say better life, I don't necessarily mean finances. Maybe their finances are okay, but maybe they do want a man, secretly want a man, because some of them won't admit that. Maybe they do want a man. Maybe they do want a certain house, a certain car, a certain this, a certain that, right? And they're praying hard on it. And they're pouring all their tithes and offerings into this church, hoping that something good comes of it, right? Hoping something good comes of it. But many of these women are being catered to within the church. Now, what I think should happen is, I think that these pastors should go hard on the topic of men and women bonding together. I think that's the most important conversation you could have, the most important sermon you can preach on, right? Because if you bond men and women together and you create stronger families, by default, this society will become a better place. I'm going to say it again. If you bond men and women together, right, and it's genuine and there's love involved and God is at the center of it, by default, of course, you will create stronger families and you will create a stronger society. But why do many pastors veer away from the scriptures that speak on marriage, and they speak on how men and women should move in a marriage, and how a man is a head and the woman should follow the man? Why don't they hammer home those topics in sermons? Why don't they hammer those, right? They should hammer Genesis 2:18, when God created Eve out of Adam's rib, and she said that the woman was created to be a suitable helper and no man should be alone, right? They should hammer 1 Corinthians 11:3, where it says that the head of woman is man and God is the head of man. They should hammer that home. They should hammer home Ephesians 5:22 through 25, where it's telling the women to submit to their husbands, and it's telling the husbands to love their wives. They should hammer those scriptures. They should hammer them But for some reason, a lot of them don't, and they're actually moving away from calling out many of the women for not being able to follow a man's lead. And I'm not talking about the pastor. When I say a man, I'm talking about a man who is their husband. They should hammer those points home. Because again, if you can bond men and women together, you will create stronger families, and stronger families will create a better, more healthier society. That is how you create a better society. Many of the issues that we have in a society come from individuals who come from broken homes. Right? Look at the stats on the education system and the household that the kids who are not doing well come from. Look at the jail and prison systems. Look at the households that those inmates come from. Right? They come from broken homes. Many of them, most of them come from broken homes in both of those scenarios. So why aren't these pastors hammering home the importance of a man and a woman bonded together, and that woman being in submission to that man? Why don't they hammer that home? If I was a pastor, that would be the main thing I talked about. And then we could talk about everything else. We talk your heart, your spirit, all of that comes with that. But you got to work on that heart. You got to get their hearts in the right place so they can know how to follow a man's lead. And even with the men, you got to build up strong men who know how to love, and who know how to lead, and who know how to problem solve, and who know how to properly run a household while following God. But it's up to these pastors and these churches to do that. But many of them do not. Our women in the black community are in last place when it comes to marriage. That is why this topic is so important. They are in last place. They are married at 25%. 1 out of every 4. The next lowest group, I believe, is the white woman at 50%. But we are low when it comes to that. And many of these women are attending church. I would even go further to say that I would argue that many of these women who are even in the church and even not in the church are atheists and agnostic and don't even know it. Just because you say you believe doesn't mean you do. I would argue that most of them are agnostic or atheists. Not all of them. You got some good ones out there. Don't get it twisted. But I would argue that most of them are atheists or agnostic because they do not truly follow the word. Because if you put some of them scriptures up there about marriage, and you start talking about that stuff, and you start talking about following a man's lead and being submissive and this, that, and the third, they will run the other way. Which tells me that they do not truly follow God and his ways. They do not truly have the Spirit of God in them. And this is real talk. This is real talk, and something has got to change. Something's got to change. That's all I got for this video. Like this video. Share this video. Leave a comment in the comment section. I can be off on this one. And remember, keep God first. As it says on the wall, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua 24:15. And like I said, I believe that everyone should find a good church. I don't care if you have to find you a good mixed church, right, in your area. Find a good, healthy church where you are learning God's word and you are growing, right? You are learning God's true word and you are growing. You got to find that. You got to find that. I love you all. Be blessed.